Very hard to ask questions and still be in purpose, because purpose is action. When you're in action, you're not asking how, when, where. When you're in action, you're doing something. You're moving, you're progressing, you're focused. And there's too many people that are sitting in their minds, stagnant, no energy, that aren't progressing because they're in their thoughts and they're asking questions. There's no questions to be asked because everything is already answered. You already have all the answers. It's already inside you. You sit there long enough and you tap into your intuition and you quietly welcome the divine into your being, your soul. You will have the answer right away. You know every single thing. Every single thing. There's no reason to seek out. I know we have a lot of people. I know we're on a podcast right now and they're this subject matter expert in this and that. You don't need to listen to really anybody else. Like, it's great to get, because the people that you're attracted to or the people that you like listening to are the people that resonate with what is already inside you. They just bring it out in a different way, or they remind you of who you are already. When you resonate with a certain somebody, or you like how somebody dresses, or whatever the case is, you're just seeing what's already inside of you, amplified in a different way.
Welcome to the Manders Mindset podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective, and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
I am so excited to be here for episode 50 with a very special guest, my dear friend, Bret Lockett, who honestly I admire so much. Bret Lockett is an international relationship and transformational expert, speaker, and former NFL player, passionately dedicated to empowering individuals through deep insights and transformative guidance. With expertise rooted in intricate dynamics of love, metaphysics, and the human psyche, Bret has become a sought-after love coach and authority for both men and women. Through his extraordinary journey of self-discovery and unwavering dedication, he has mastered the art of helping people cultivate fulfilling and harmonious relationships while illuminating their souls. Bret's presence is an invitation for individuals to embrace their innate essence, trust their intuition, and unlock their true potential in love and relationships. His deep understanding, captivating speaking style, and transformative approach make him a catalyst for powerful shifts within individuals and organizations alike. Bret's mission is to guide people towards the depths of their souls and facilitate intimacy and human connections. And I am here with the lovely Bret Lockett. Bret, how you doing today?
After that introduction, I don't even know who you're talking about because who wrote that thing? Because I definitely did not write that. I'm gonna have to call my publicist and give him a kudos for making me sound so awesome. That's great. I'm so excited to be here.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to have you. But this has been a long time coming. So that was an amazing bio, but I'm curious, who is Bret at the core?
So that's a very unique question and a great way to start this off. Bret is the same person that every single person listening to this podcast is. The same person that wants to love, wants to be loved, that wants to find joy, that has gone through some trials and tribulations in their life, some that have catapulted them to where they are now, and others that have caused significant pain and heartache. And at the core for me, I truly believe we are all a mirror of each other. And for me, I believe that I'm just a being here to create and live a purpose that's fulfilled with being able to change the dynamics of how men and women operate within themselves, as well as how they coalesce and work together to be able to change this world for the better. So I know I said a lot, but at the core, it's transformation. It's transformation at its greatest zenith. And that is what I'm here to bring. That's who I am. And that's always been me, and I've had to fight through some twists and some turns to be able to bring that to light. But I show up in front of you today as someone who's proud of the journey and someone who's also eager for the next part of the journey, because there's so much more to come.
Okay. Wow. I love that. So I'd love to backtrack on the journey. If you could tell us a little bit about your childhood upbringing, kind of the family dynamic.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in a great household. My parents are still married to this day. Celebrated, I think it's like 45 years of marriage not too long ago. And the biggest support system that I could ever ask for. I mean, I was always encouraged to try things, to do new things, to give my best, to, never start something that I wouldn't finish. That was a big one growing up. And, my parents were, I think like a lot of parents, they want to see their kids do well. They want to do what's best for their children. And so I grew up in a beautiful household. My parents both worked 9 to 5s. They were gone most of the day, but when they were back, they're taking myself to soccer practice, baseball, football, you name it. Same thing with my younger brother and my younger sister. So just growing up, the dynamic was, there was a lot going on there. It was great, and for myself, I was a very mischievous young man. I was always getting into quote unquote trouble. I don't really call it trouble. I just feel like I was bending the rules because I didn't like the rules that were in place. And I feel like I've always done that because I just don't like doing things that I don't feel resonate with my soul. So, I, during kindergarten, was always in trouble, always in the principal's office, from whatever it was, pushing somebody off the jungle gym or whatnot. There was always something going on there. But, and then that kind of followed me into middle school where, that was my first real stint at really trying to fit in with, young men. And I feel like middle school is the age where you figure out kind of who you are, how you resonate with, your peers. And, for me, I was one of the only African-American kids that grew up in my neighborhood. So it was mostly Asian. And my middle school was mostly like, Caucasian and Asian. So it was like one of 3 Black children at my high school. So, I used to skateboard and rollerblade as well as play basketball and football and all that other stuff. So when I got to middle school, I started to get bullied for really the first time in my life. And it was very different for me. It was really my first understanding of a world that could possibly be cruel, a world of, differences and people not embracing the differences, but pointing them out and teasing you. And we all did it as kids. We all teased somebody or bullied somebody. And and then that followed me into, high school, as well as, UCLA when I went there after high school. So most of my childhood was really fighting, my peers and trying to show that I was enough to be liked, to be cool, to be enough. And, it as I progressed in sports and earned a scholarship to UCLA to play football, that started to change, right? That's when I started to become the cool kid. And, I was a senior. And so people started to look at me very different because of how good I was at football. And so I started to wrap my identity into, okay, I'm great at football and this is why people like me, right? I'm great on the field and this is what makes me cool. I'm better than everybody in sports, so this is why I'm more confident than everybody else, right? And so a large part of who I am once I, got into college and then the NFL, and then after the NFL was wrapped in this identity of being this top athlete. And it was what propelled me to the level that I was at, but it was also what caused a lot of the challenges and the issues and the pain of not being enough. So it started great. I think I have one of the best childhoods that a kid could ask for. I have some of the most supportive parents out there. They're not perfect just like anybody else, but they're perfect for me. I truly believe that, So, and I have a younger brother who's a great brother, and a younger sister who's incredible herself. So, couldn't ask for a better childhood, really.
Okay. So now you mentioned you were bullied in middle school. What was it you were bullied for?
So there's social dynamics and constructs all throughout the world, right? And based on culture and what is the norm for that culture, if you don't fit into that, then you tend to be teased or bullied. And when I say bullied, it was more of like teasing, but then the teasing led into bullying because I wasn't backing down. You know what I'm saying? And so I feel like you can tease someone and then they just kind of do their thing and they're like, oh, whatever. And you kind of, the bully stops kind of teasing him. But like when you combat the bully, then, that's when it prolongs, and I wasn't going to back down. My parents taught me never back down to anybody, be proud of who you are and where you come from, so I didn't back down, and that was like where it insisted. But really, as a Black man in America, culturally, and at that time, this was like, 1998, 2000, rap it wasn't as pop as today it was, right? Like rock and heavy metal aren't really even a genre anymore. Kids really don't listen to it like they did back then. So I grew up listening to like Blink-182 and Green Day and, Metallica and, you name it. And most of the kids that were in middle school that were Black, they didn't grow up like that. Like they grew up listening to Biggie and Tupac and all that stuff. And they had older brothers and cousins and this and that. And I was the oldest, in my family out of the children. So I didn't really have someone to talk to about this kind of stuff or what was cool. I just did what I liked and what was on television. So I would watch MTV. I go home, I watch TRL, whatever was on TRL. If it was Limp Bizkit, that's what I was listening to. If it was Kid Rock, that's what I was listening to. Right. And then I skateboarded and I rollerbladed. So I was like a big Tony Hawk fan. Most Black kids didn't rollerblade at the time. Right. So I was wearing like DCs and Vans before it was cool for Black kids to actually skateboard and rollerblade. So I would get made fun of for not really fitting in. And then, it was just kind of like people also, I think, saw me as a threat, or young boys saw me as a threat because I was good in sports. And they knew that, well, this kid he's not really witty. He doesn't really talk back. So I can say some things to him, or I can make him feel like he's not really good, and he'd take it, so there was a whole lot there that, as I've gotten older, I look back on and I see where a lot of the challenges were, but I also see where a lot of the instances that propelled me to get to where I'm at were as well. Because they go hand in hand. You can't have good without the bad, and you can't have bad without the good, right? So understanding that, it's like, okay, great, this is what happened, but this is also the reaction as to what occurred, if that makes sense.
Okay, I gotcha. So now, were you always involved in sports growing up?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. Okay. Yeah. Ever since 4 years old, my parents put me in 3 sports a year. It was first soccer, basketball, baseball. And I did that, like I would do like the swimming during the summer, like the Y and stuff like that. But like I did football, basketball, and baseball for probably like the first 4 to like 9. And then I got into football, and my mother didn't let me play football until I was 9. And then I started playing football. And it's the same season of soccer. So it's like, either you're going to play football or you're going to play soccer. She was like, I can't take you to both practices because this is insane. You got like travel soccer, you got football on Sundays. So, I ended up sticking with football and did that, played in high school as well, basketball, football, ran track. I've pretty much done it all. I was on the volleyball team in 8th grade and in middle school. So, sports was all of my life growing up.
Okay. Now, were you always really good at football? Was football always the sport you were better at?
I mean, I was the kid that you put me in any sport and I was going to be the best kid on the field. Like I was just a natural athlete and I was just gifted. I was bigger than a lot of the kids. Like I grew very young. So when I was an eighth grader, I was already 6 feet.
Oh,
So I was like this tall, skinny, you know, you see those like
okay.
tall, lanky, like
Okay.
14-year-olds. That
Wow.
was me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I was way bigger than everybody. But it wasn't one of those clumsy, 14-year-olds, like they look like, Bambi out there because they have to strain. Their legs are like wobbling and stuff. I wasn't that kid. I was like big. I was fast. My frame fit like where I was at athletically, you know what I mean? So
Mhm.
I was good in basketball. I actually loved basketball more than football. I was really good in basketball and enjoyed it a lot. But as I got into high school, I realized that I was a much better football player than I was basketball, even though I thought I was great at basketball. So ended up sticking with football after my sophomore year in high school, and did football and track. And I knew I was good, but I still didn't know how good I was, right? And this is like kind of like the ignorance of, growing up at that time and not really having people who've taken that path around you. I didn't know how I was going to get to college. I just knew that you play football in high school and then you start playing football in college. I didn't know that, you got a scholarship and then you got recruited. And then if you were good enough, you would get a scholarship and then you would go there for 4 years and then you'd have the opportunity to play in the NFL. I didn't know any of that stuff. So, in my naive mind, I was just like, all right, I'm just, I'm going to play, high school, and then I'm going to go to college. And I remember it was my junior year and I didn't even like know about like college applications. Like there was no like college counselors like talking about that stuff back then. Not like that.
Oh.
And so my junior year, I go to a football camp in San Diego. It's a Nike football camp at the time. And I go to that camp and I didn't know how well I was going to do. I just knew I was going to go compete. And I was there, it was like a 2-3 hour camp. It was some of the top kids in California went. I remember it was probably like 300-400 kids that went through there, maybe like 5. There was a lot of kids. I never seen anything like it. And they were all the top college coaches on the sideline. And, I did my thing. And a week following that camp, I had a scholarship from the University of Arizona. And that was when I realized how good that I actually was. Because I had some good players on my team, who also played in college, and some one of them went ahead and played in the NFL with me on the Patriots, which is ironic. But I didn't know how good I was at that time until I went to that camp, and then I had a scholarship a week later, and then I had all these articles that were written up about me, and then I had college coaches from USC and Boise State and all these other schools coming to my school asking about me. And then my coach is like, oh, like, then I saw my coach switch. My coach was like, oh, like, Bret's great and this and that. Like before, when I told him I was going to the camp, he was like, oh, all right, good luck. Like, I don't think he knew the extent to how good I was. You know what I mean? And so I brought a lot of recognition to that school just based on that one camp. And then, I got recruited, and that recruiting process was crazy. It's crazy now. But back then it was like, coaches will call you on your home phone because there was no cell phones like that. So I would get, letters, 4 or 5 letters a day from colleges. I come home, I'd have like 3 or 4 coaches call me a night just to talk about the program and this and that. And I was like, this is pretty crazy, but it was a really cool experience. I wouldn't take it back for anything.
So you mentioned that you were naive about the whole process and you didn't know like about the recruiting, about how it worked to get into the NFL. So that wasn't your plan all along? That wasn't the goal, become an NFL player?
The goal was to be an NFL player. That goal had never changed. But understanding how to get there, I had no clue. And when I look back on my life then, and then I look at my life now, and I look at creating anything that I really want or doing something that I want to achieve, that is a perfect example when you really talk about being able to manifest or being able to create the life that you want, because you don't know the path of how you're going to get there. All you know is that you're going to get there at some point, right? And so for me, I just stayed focused on getting there, and everything came to me because it was what was right for me, right? And I was doing all the right things. There's a lot of luck involved in that, but I was doing the right things, and I've been preparing myself my whole life to do that.
Okay. Now, you said you stayed focused on the right things.
Correct.
if you didn't know the path to get there, how do you know what were the right things?
Innately, you know what's right and wrong, right? You know, if I keep doing this, I'm probably going to get better results than if I do that, right? So perfect example was like, okay, if I keep partying, I'm probably not going to be a very good football player, because partying and being a great athlete don't really go hand in hand, right? And that was the lesson that I had to learn later in my career, because when you're younger, you can do that. The later you are in your career, your body starts to change, right? You get a little bit older, you can't do the same things you were doing when you were 19, right? And so I realized, okay, well, what can I do every single day to get an advantage on everybody else? Because if everybody else is doing the same thing, going to practice for 2 hours and then going home, well, what if I practice on my off day? Or what if I got my quarterback and we went out there and we ran routes? Or what if I just went to the field myself and just did cone drills, right? Would I get the advantage? Okay, well, what if I just woke up at 5, took my protein shake, made my food, and then went to the gym, right? So I always looked at how can I get an advantage on everybody else. So when I was my senior year, once I decided I was going to go to UCLA sent me a entire program for strength and conditioning to get prepared to, compete at UCLA once I got there. So what I did, I didn't have to go do this, but what I did is I would wake up and I didn't have a first period. So my coach would open up the weight room, and I go in there and I do most of the workout. And then I also had a trainer in the evening, and we would do a different workout. So I would work out in the mornings, do the UCLA program, and then I would go work out in the evenings. And I would do this I would do the UCLA like 4 times a week, and then I work out in the evenings like 3 times a week, right? I knew for a fact, and this is the thing that I think that I realized at a very young age, is that most people can't outwork me. And I took pride in that, because it gave me, it was a energetic jolt to, as an athlete, some people, when I look at athletes across the board, there's athletes that like to compete, and then there's athletes that like to dominate. And for me, I never want to compete, right? I want to absolutely, if this is what I do, right? And this is a very different conversation than where we're going to transition to when we start talking about everything else, right? Spirituality, metaphysics, love, like relationships. It's very different when I'm not dominating in my relationships. Okay, that's not what I'm saying. Okay, but in football, okay, in football, it's one of the most physical and violent sports there is to this day. So if I'm going to play that game, I know that I have to dominate you. And I know that I'm not just going to do that on the game day. I'm going to do that in practice every single day. So when I practice, I wanted to dominate everybody else. So if we're running 20 sprints, I wanted to win every single one of those sprints. I wasn't going to jog and stay in the middle of the pack or be in the front of the pack. I wanted to be first every single sprint. And that was kind of how I lived my athletic career. And if you talk to anybody, they'll tell you that like Bret like worked his ass off more than anybody else. And I took pride in that. So that was like my I think we all have gifts and superpowers. My ability to outwork people and be willing to die in the situation, right? If we're running 20 sprints, like that's not easy. You know, and I know you've done some athletics in your life. You're running 20 sprints, like everybody's gassed and everybody's huffing and puffing. But guess what? I was gonna push it, and I was not gonna let you beat me. And if you did beat me, that's fine. But I guarantee you, if we ran 20 sprints, I was gonna win at least 11 of them. I mean, that means we won technically, right? But then the next time I was gonna win 12, and the next time I was gonna win 14. And then eventually I'm gonna win all 20 because I pushed myself to the limit every single time. And, you know, I coach a bunch of young athletes now. And that's the thing that I try to instill in them is like, you have to have this mental fortitude to be able to push yourself in life and in football harder than anybody else. If this is what you say you want, because if it's what you say you want, then I'm going to hold you accountable to that, right? Because you can't say, I want this, I love this game, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. Because if you love something, right, and you say, I love this, well, if you love it, you're going to do whatever it takes to protect it, right? If you truly love something, you're going to protect it with your life. You're going to give everything you have. So you can't tell me you love football and then it's time to go run sprints and you're giving me 85%. right? Or 60%. You don't love it. Well, I don't like working hard. You don't love it that bad. So we got to reevaluate why you don't love it, right? So there's a whole, mental psychology of sports performance that if you really get down to the bottom of it in the foundational level, it all has to do with your ability to be able to push limits and push boundaries, and then be able to show up the next day and then do it all over again, because it doesn't stop, and if you look at any of the top football players or sports players in general, from Jordan to Kobe to Wayne Gretzky to Tom Brady, they all have this ability and this hunger to give 150% day one and then come back and give 150% day two. And this is no different than in life. If you're trying to accomplish anything, and this is the great part about it. Nobody asks you to give your 100% 12 hours a day. Nobody's asking that, right? Like nobody says like, hey, I need you to work all day at 100% for 8 hours in your job. No, they need you to focus during this meeting. They need you to focus during this task, and then you get a break, right? The average person only truly focuses about 3 to 4 hours a day. True focus, uninterrupted focus. And that statistic is from a few years back. So it's probably decreased probably by at least 25% to 50% based on our attention span because of social media, right? So, in phones. So the average person probably today really only focuses about 2 hours, 2.5 hours, to be real with you, right? So if I can focus 6 hours a day and give 100%, I already know that I'm beating the rest of the world by over 75%. Right. So in this context, this is a sports context, right? Because once we start talking about life, it's not about beating anybody. We'll talk about that a little later. But, when you talk about the competition and, competing and dominating, this is what is required to be able to get to that next level. And this is for anything that you want to truly do in life that's going to require all of you. Because if you want to live a life to where your dream is being manifested and becoming reality, there's no way for you to give 75% and think you're going to get 100% of your dream. It don't go hand in hand. It's not the same level. That's just what it is. So I know I said a lot there.
No, that's all very true. I love how you mentioned if you love it, you'll protect it.
100%.
That's true with everything, no matter what it is, whether it's a person, an environment, anything. I've never heard that before, though, interestingly enough.
I don't know if I've actually said it before, but in that way, but that's really what it comes down to. And, and you can absolutely love something and do things that are not in its best interest. It doesn't necessarily mean you don't love it. It just may mean that you may be dealing with some issues yourself to where you don't know how to love that thing properly, right? And that's more of a relationship thing. But like I said, we're talking about sports right now. So I know I contradicted myself, but I want to make the distinction because sports and relationships are slightly different. Slightly.
They're slightly different?
Slightly, because you're dealing with the other person, where sport you're usually dealing with yourself.
Okay. And you'd say sports are more internal? Sports
are all internal. Sports is all about you. You're not competing against anybody else. You're competing against yourself. Competing against yourself. Your ability to get out of your way, your own way. Your ability to stay focused on what you need to. Your ability to wake up and do what you know you're supposed to do when you know you're tired. Your ability to go the extra mile because you know that the other person's not willing to do it. Like that's all yourself. There's nobody else involved in that. Like, yeah, you got to deal with coaches and teammates and stuff like that. But if you give 100% of who you are, you're just going to make everybody better. You see the difference there? Whereas in a relationship, you have the other person, right? There's a whole different dynamic there.
No, that I get it. I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Now, you also mentioned in there how you hold the kids you coach accountable. And now I've noticed that is something that you do a lot in your life, whether you advertise or promote that you do it. You are definitely a big accountable person. I have told a few people even about your message to me. I don't know if you know what I'm referring to, but January 9th, you sent me a voice message and you were screaming. You're like, we are 9 days into 2024. What have you done with the first 9 days of the year? Have you always, no, I appreciated that. Like, I'm just curious. Have you always been the type of person to really motivate and help hold other people accountable? You're great at it yourself, but have you always been great with doing it for other people too?
I don't know if I've always done it for other people as a young kid. Like when you're playing youth sports, I don't know if I'm like, yeah, guys, let's go get it motivated. It was just like, give me the ball so I can run and score. You know, like, give me the ball so I can shoot it. You know, like I don't think you're worried about motivating the team when you're that young. But like as I got into high school, you know, and you know, you start standing out as the leader, and you know, you need everybody else to play to a certain level. You know, yes, you start to be kind of that motivator. And then when I got to college, you know, and like going towards like my junior year, I really started to step up. And then my senior year, it was like, let's go. Because you got to understand, like people are still people, and there's still the 1%ers for a reason when it comes to people, you know, performing at a certain level in their industry. And you got to be a very special person to wake up at 5:30 or 5:15 and go down in when it's dark outside and get dressed and be on the field for 6 o'clock when you know you're about to die. you got to be somewhat psychotic, and you also got to be psychotic to know that I got to run down 15 yards and I got to hit this guy as hard as I can and try to hurt him. Right? There's got to be a mental switch in your brain that gets turned on, and so for me, I had that switch, and I knew that I'm gonna turn this bitch out. And I, you know, that's just what it was. It was like, I'm here and you're going to know I'm here. And if you're not working at the level that I need you to work at, then I need you to pick it up, because guess what? You're my teammate. So if I look to my left and I know that I got this guy that's been training half-assed and we're in a game and I know he doesn't give his all, like, am I going to be really comfortable knowing that this guy is over here and I got to rely on him to do his job? No, I'm not. And I also knew that, you know, certain people needed to wake the fuck up in the mornings, right? And so my job was to show up and to show out and let them know, like, hey, it's time to work. It's business. You know what I mean? So there's just a certain level of energy that's required to do anything. And I realized that at a young age. And I took that into not just sports, but I take it into everything else that I do, because it requires energy to be able to sustain anything in life, but it also requires a specific level of dedication and passion to be able to drive you. And if you don't have those two things, you'll never get to where you're trying to
go. Okay. So you've always done it for your teammates, but where do I come into that?
You know, as I've you know, gotten older and realized really, you know, my true purpose, which is to awaken people's souls. Part of awakening someone is making sure that they move in the right direction to where they need to go. Right. And I mean, it's actually kind of crazy because I'm in Guatemala right now. As you know, you can see this is my normal setup, and I've been traveling for the last, you know, almost 2 months now. And this whole trip, I realized that all my time, like daily, is spent helping people take their life to the next level. And I didn't realize that when I was back, you know, in LA, because, you know, you're working and doing other things. But all I do is think about certain people. When people cross my mind, I understand that it's not just crossing. You don't have a thought just for a reason, right? When somebody comes into your mind, it's usually for a reason. And so when people pop into my mind, I reach out to them. Hey, just thought about you. Hey, what's going on? Hey, let me send you some energy, because we're all dealing with something, you know, and now more than ever. And most people don't know what they're dealing with or why they're even dealing with it. So if I can just be a little jolt of energy just to shake you and wake you up just a little bit, to push you a little bit further than where you're already going, or maybe redirect you back on your path, like that's really how I look at what I do. It's really just a jolt of energy just to align you on where you're supposed to be. So that message just came because you crossed my mind for whatever reason at that time. And, I know you said you had some big plans for this year. So, I just wanted to hold you accountable to that.
No, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. But you've just always, it's interesting that you say you didn't notice it till you were traveling, because it's something I noticed about you right away. Even from when you said to me, I'll be a guest once you hit at least 8 episodes. And
49 later, here we are.
And I told some people that, and they're like, oh, he said that to you? And I'm like, yo, that's just giving me the oomph to make sure I get to fucking 8 episodes. And that's what I had in the back of my mind. And then even Liz said, you better not interview Bret till you have your shit together. And I said, don't you worry. I won't interview Bret till I have my shit together. Don't you worry.
Uh-huh. And here we are.
And here we are.
Mm-hmm.
But I love that. I love that you do that for so many people. And I just wanted to make sure you know that I really appreciate that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing that. And I wish more people understood that, because that's what our true purpose is on this planet. It's not to work a career 9 to 5 all day. It's not to, try to make all this money and spend it on homes and cars and fancy vacations. Like, a lot of that stuff is great, but that's not why we're here. We're here to help one another understand where we came from and truly what we're here to do. And it has everything to do with creation, right? And a big part of, how, I look at money now is not just about making money, but it's about, because money is just an external expression of your internal ability to manifest a purpose deep inside of you.
Can you explain?
Yeah, because so money is an external expression of you being able to create, right? Period. Think about nature, right? You can live in nature, and there's no such thing as money, right? If you just lived in nature, there's no such thing as money. There's the plants, there's the water, there's the resources, there's the wood, and your ability to be able to create a home, be able to create something sustainable for you to live. That's your external expression of you being able to create, right? And so we've been taken out of that, and we've been put into cities and everything else because of obviously where we've come from, which is great. Life is very easy. Life is very simple. But what has been taken away from us is our ability to be able to create and survive, with understanding that we don't need a lot to survive. Right. And that's part of the fear that we all carry, which is we may not be able to survive. We may not be able to have enough. So I need to make sure if anything ever happens, I got enough. Right. A tree doesn't say, oh, I need way more leaves. These are not enough leaves. Like, I know winter's coming. I need more leaves. The tree doesn't say that, because the tree knows their cycles. The tree knows their seasons. And the biggest misconception for, I think, humanity right now, or the misunderstanding, I should say, is that we have removed ourselves from nature and don't believe that we're truly the same as a dog, a tiger, trees, water. We're all a part of the same thing. We're all consciousness, right? And the more we start to understand about life and about the universe, the more we're starting to realize that we're no different. We're no different than plants. Plants communicate, plants talk, plants communicate with. I was watching something on social media where I saw there was this plant. I forget the name of the plant, but there was a specific kind of bat that would come and it would sleep inside the plant. The plant would open up, and the bat would come in and would eat off of its like nectar or whatever was in the plant. And by the bat saliva, it would actually nourish the plant, right? And it was just like this symbiosis relationship. And when you look at nature, there's thousands of examples of that. And we don't believe that we fit into that anymore. And I think that's the biggest misconception of, being able to truly manifest, because money is not real, first of all. And you will always have as much as you need when you need it. Right. So if you don't have a really big cause to be able to use the money for, and you're just using it to buy certain things for you, to just buy a nice TV, to watch Netflix at home, you're not really going to have a very abundant life. You're always going to be worried about, well, man, I got to go work this job. And then, I get paid next Tuesday, fuck. I mean, maybe we go to the bar this weekend, and, like, living that life is never going to get you to where you think you need to be. Because if you're depending on somebody else to save you, guess what? Nobody's going to come save you. Nobody is going to come and help you out. You got to help yourself. And I think that's the biggest problem. One of the biggest problems that we see in the world is that, people rely on the government, or people rely on their employer. Like, their employer, I'm the employer, right? I own a company, right? Like, I'm going to help as much as I can, but guess what? I can't help you more than I help myself. So when people are like, oh, I don't feel like I'm getting paid enough. Well, are you really doing enough to be able to add value to the people you're working with? Or are you just looking for a job to pay your bills? And if you are, like, I really want you to reconsider, like, what are you going to do that is going to allow you to be able to live the life that you want? Because if you think just showing up and doing the work is going to get you there, it's not. It's got to be more to it.
Okay. Now, you said a lot there.
I'm long-winded at times. I apologize.
It's okay. I agree that everything is consciousness, though. You mentioned that, and I completely agree. So you talked about how so many people are depending on someone else or something else to save them. Do you have suggestions for people to step away from that?
Yeah, very, very simple suggestion. Stop being the victim. It's as easy as it gets. Stop being the victim. Stop allowing people to take away your power. Stop allowing people to cross your boundaries, and take accountability for your emotions and your life. If you've gone through some things in life that have been extremely challenging and difficult, acknowledge them. Acknowledge them, and then start looking for a way out. The first step is taking accountability to say, I want to change. That's the first step. Once you say, I want to change, and then you take action, things start happening, right? And when I got done playing football, that was the hardest time of my life, because my whole identity was football, and then I was ripped away from me at 26. And then I got out of a relationship, and I had to move back to LA, and I was completely broken, just almost rock bottom. And I was depressed, and I remember, like, I looked at myself and I said, we got to do what we got to do. We got to rebuild. And that's what I did. And I started working at a gym. I was making $20 an hour at one point. Started making $20 an hour, right, at a gym. And I knew what my work was. I just got done playing in the NFL. Like, I knew I should be making $150 session minimum, but that was the only opportunity that I had. So started working there. Then I realized, that wasn't going to sustain. Then I got into finance. So I did what I had to do, and it's not always going to be pretty, and I think we have too much pride in the United States about what we do. Like, there's too much pride, like, oh, I'm not going to work there. Oh, I'm not going to do that. And it's like, why not? Why not? If it's a means to an end, if it's a stepping stone to get you to where you want to be, why do you need to say, I'm not doing that? Right. And like I said, I've been in South America, and I met some of the most beautiful people who are bartenders and, waitresses and, just taxi drivers, like, just very simple jobs. And these are some of the nicest people I've ever met in my life. No ego. They don't care. I told them, they know I play football. They don't care. They don't treat you any different down here, and that's what I love. It's like, I think a lot of us base how we treat people on what we can get from them. Oh, who's it? Oh, I can't do anything with him. Next person. Right. And we don't And a lot of that comes down to you not believing in yourself. So I need to find somebody who's this, who's that, because you don't believe in yourself. And so I approach life very, very differently with an attitude of, one, I'm not the victim. I've never been the victim, first of all. But I'm not the victim, and I'm not going to allow myself to stay in a situation that I know is not right for me. Right. And it takes time. It may take you a couple of years to realize something's not right for you. But when you realize, hey, I've outgrown this situation, or it's not it, move on to the next thing, And when you know it's time to grow, or it's time to grow, it's time to go. Right. So like I'll go to right when I got into finance, there was a lot of personal development involved, and there was a lot of, Tony Robbins and this and that. And, and this is just how my brain operates. I'm always thinking like 2 steps, 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. So I'm like, okay, Tony Robbins is this and that. And I remember I started following Tony Robbins on his email chain, on his email list. And I remember seeing him send out a newsletter saying, hey, we're going to be in the LA area. If you want to, if you want to have one of our coaches come to, do a session at your company, let us know. I saw that. I jumped so quickly. I went into the managing partner's office and I said, hey, I reached out to Tony Robbins and I have one of his coaches that want to come do something here. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah. I was like, would it be okay? He's like, well, how much is it? I said, it's free. He's like, it's free. I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right. He's like, well, let's try these dates. Let's tee it up. So did that. Right. And then guess what I did? I was like, I'm not just going to do one for Tony Robbins. Guess who else I'm going to do one? Or I'm not going to do one with the company I was with. Guess who else I'm going to do one with? Bret Lockett. So Bret Lockett and Tony Robbins are doing an event now, right? Guess who I invited? All my people who are close to me, right? All the people that I knew were like somebody in because I knew, I was like, this is part of building where I want to go, right? And so I had like 60 people show up, because you hear Tony Robbins, everybody shows up, right? It's like 2017, and then so we did one session for my people, then we did another session for my company, and then we ended up selling tickets. They ended up selling tickets to us to go to Tony Robbins' event in LA in 2017. It was like 9,000 people there. It was sold out. It was jam packed, and that absolutely changed my life. It was called what was that event called? Unleash the Power Within. And he doesn't do these events live in person anymore, and I'm sad he doesn't, because that was one of the most life-changing events for me at that time. It completely liberated a certain part of me that I forgot existed inside of me, right? And so, and from that, right, and when you take steps to move towards the next place that you're trying to go, things start happening that you don't even know are happening. So, for instance, you know Dragon Tchaikovsky, correct? Mm-hmm. Right, who spoke at a couple of our friend Curtis Thomas, right, who spoke at a couple of his events, right?
Yep. Dragon
Tchaikovsky was the coach that came to the company and also did the event with me. That's when I met Dragon in 2017.
Really?
You see how the world comes full circle?
Oh my God.
Yep. So you never know what opportunity or what situation is going to move you in the next direction and put you on your path. But the key is moving forward. If you're moving, there's energy. If you're stagnant, there's nothing, right? So you got to move in that direction. And the biggest thing that I see is people don't move because they're afraid. They don't move because of fear. And I know people talk about fear all the time, but like, really, what is fear? Like, what is fear? Fear is the emotional charge that if I do something, I may either not be good at it. And if I'm not good at it, I'm probably going to get laughed at or ridiculed, and I'm not going to fit in, or I may possibly get hurt. That's the next thing, right? That's the last thing. And so when you understand that, you're like, damn, like, for instance, I love music. I love playing good music, and I'm here in Guatemala, and, there's this hostel here that, I go to all the time, and they have this really cool speakeasy in the back, but the music sometimes isn't great. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to DJ this thing. And like, I downloaded some DJ equipment and stuff. I love music, right? And all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, should I really do this? Like, I don't even know how to operate this equipment like this, right? And I said, no, Brett, that's just fear. That's just fear that you may mess up. And guess what? I probably will mess up. Okay. But who hasn't messed up? Who hasn't messed up? If you don't know where you're going, even if you do know where you're going, how many times you know exactly where you're going following the GPS, and you've been, not how many times, I hope you haven't been in this in a lot of times, but how many times you've been going in the same direction you normally go in, and then you get in a car crash? Everybody's been in at least one car crash.
I did not. I have, but I thought you were going to mention you get lost following the GPS.
No. It's not lost. If something happens, you're not lost, right? You're following the GPS, or you're just going in a direction you normally know, and then
Oh my God,
a car crash, flat tire, something, right? And you're completely unprepared to deal with it, and it completely jolts your whole life, right? Or your whole situation at the time. Things happen that you can't predict. But you still need to move in the direction that you're going to move into, because everything that happens is supposed to happen at that time.
You believe that with everything?
100% on my life. I believe that there is a cosmic choreographed dance that is happening on this plane and several other planes. And when you understand that, and you understand that everything moves in the direction that it's supposed to, when it's supposed to move there, you stop questioning things. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that most people don't move because there's still questions as to why, as to how, as to when. You can't ask questions and still be in purpose. It's very hard to ask questions and still be in purpose, because purpose is action. When you're in action, you're not asking how, when, where. When you're in action, you're doing something. You're moving, you're progressing, you're focused. And there's too many people that are sitting in their minds, stagnant, no energy, that aren't progressing because they're in their thoughts and they're asking questions. There's no questions to be asked, because everything is already answered. You already have all the answers. It's already inside you. If you sit there long enough and you tap into your intuition, and you quietly welcome the divine into your being, your soul, you will have the answer right away. You know every single thing. Every single thing. There's no reason to seek out. I know we have a lot of people. I know we're on podcasts right now, and there's this subject matter expert in this and that. You don't need to listen to really anybody else. Like, it's great to get, because the people that you're attracted to, or the people that you like listening to, are the people that resonate with what is already inside you. They just bring it out in a different way, or they remind you of who you are already. So when you resonate with a certain somebody, or you like how somebody dresses, or whatever the case is, you're just seeing what's already inside of you amplified in a different way. And then when you dislike something, you're seeing the same thing that you dislike in yourself in a different way. Right? Everything is a cosmic mirror to who you are and what you are.
Okay.
So when you start understanding that, I can look at the world very differently. When I look at the world very differently, I change my frequency. When I change my frequency, I change my attitude, which means I start leveling up and I start vibrating at a higher level than I once was before.
Okay. Now, before you keep going,
yeah, go for it. I know. Listen, stop me when you need to.
I want back. I know.
Yeah.
I want to backtrack a tad bit. You mentioned fear. Now, I want to touch upon a story that you told me and a group of our breathwork people, about a fear you experienced during whitewater rafting in Mount Shasta, and how you overcame that.
Yeah. I mean, I've come a long way since then. I'm like a pro in water now. Like it's like water, for whatever reason, I never really liked water after a certain age. I think I just stopped getting into water, and that's actually something that makes me think about why, for whatever reason. But I just had a thing with water, and we went whitewater rafting on a retreat in Mount Shasta. And I ended up having to sit in the front of the boat, and I was just getting blasted by water the whole time. But not just that, but, we were in like a stage 4 water rafting ride that is pretty much like you could die, and there was a couple people who thought they may not make it. But I moved through that, and, and I continue to move through things. The more I realize that fear is really in the the greatest fear is a fear of death, right? The reason why you're afraid to do certain things, jump out of a plane, jump out of a moving car. I was just, on the other side of the lake, and there's this huge rope that's hooked up to a branch, and you could jump off the low part, and somebody decided that there was a higher part. I guess somebody found it, and they're like, Bret, go jump off of that. And I'm like, nah, I'm good. And he's like, no, come on, go do it. And I was like, you know what? F it. Went all the way to the top, jumped off it, and it was terrifying, but I did it. Because when you understand that the greatest fear is the fear of losing life or the fear of death, right? Because of your physical body, your body feels fear. Your soul doesn't feel fear, okay? But your physical body feels fear. It feels emotions. It feels everything else. That's why you feel all of these things. But when you understand that there's a separation between your body and your soul, you understand that it's just the body talking to you. And so I've been able to hack certain things because I understand that that's just my body, and if something does happen to where I die, but that's just a part of this journey, right? And you can try to make all the right decisions and drive yourself crazy, or you can just make the decision that feels good for you at that time and live with the consequences, right? As long as you're not hurting someone and you're doing the right thing, there's really no wrong decision. It's just the decision that you're making at that time. There's so many timelines playing out in terms of what you could have done or what you didn't do, right? There's like different versions of what your reality could be. And it's all based on this decision. We make millions of them every single day. Whether we decide to brush our teeth first or floss or whatever it is, right? Decide to have tea this morning or decide to grab water, whatever it is, we're making millions of decisions that are changing our reality, right? And the key is just making those decisions that you want in your life without being encumbered by fear or emotions that are not in the highest and greatest good of who you are.
Okay. Now, you mentioned, and no, you didn't touch upon this in your explanation, but you mentioned when you were discussing this about how you hate water and you were in the back at first, and one of the women were getting really trampled with all this water, and
it was my fault. No, I'm kidding.
What?
I'm kidding. She was in the front, and I was in the back because I didn't want to get killed with all this water. And then our dear friend Curtis said, Bret, get in the front. This is your challenge, first of all. Second of all, you're the man, so get in the front. So I ended up getting in the front, and it all worked out how it was supposed to. Made it. We had one person fall out the raft, and we were able to pull her back in, and it was a journey. But that's a great example of understanding when it's time to lead and when it's time to fall back. And I think we all have these situations in our life where it's time to step up and lead, and you keep going back to where you are because you're afraid. And sometimes, it may not be time for you to lead, and you don't know how to play the back. And there's a lot of younger guys or girls who are ambitious who sometimes don't understand that, right? Sometimes it's better to give up somebody else the opportunity to lead than it is for you to just always be in the front. And you got to know the dynamics of that. So, it's not just one way or the other. There's people who are born to lead, and there's also people who are born to be a part of that leadership. But also being a part of that leadership means that sometimes you're going to lead, right? Like you may have a CEO of a company and he's leading the company, but guess what? His CFO is going to step into meetings and he's got to lead sometimes, or that CEO is going to have to step into a meeting and say, hey, this is what we need to change if we need to go here, right? There's certain people that are going to lead at certain times. Understanding that one person just doesn't lead the whole time is vital to being able to understand the waves of life.
No, that makes a lot of sense. I completely agree. And you mentioned when you were telling us this about how you had to embody a different person and become the beast that you are, not the Bret that's afraid of water, the beast football Bret that you are.
Yeah, I had to go back to, my college playing days, waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, yelling at people. So, as a person, I believe that we all need to go once a year. I know were you on the goal planning event that I did 2 years ago?
No, not 2 years ago. I didn't even know of CODIS or of you guys.
Yep. So you're only almost a year in now. So 2 years ago, I did the goal planning event, and there was something that I challenged everybody to do, which was this Japanese tradition that's called a misogi. And a misogi is doing one thing that is so hard that it completely overhauls your entire year. Right. So it could be skydiving. It could be jumping off a waterfall. It could be hiking, Mount Everest, whatever it is, something that is so challenging that it makes life so easy. And, for me, this trip that I'm on right now is probably, my misogi for the year, because it's helped me realize more than I ever could about myself. And I've done some things that I would never, ever, ever do. And it can't, and the thing about it, and I really want women to embrace this too, because men are like, yeah, no problem, I can do that, right? Because for men, a lot of times it's physical, right? Like, I need to overcome this physical thing. And I don't feel like women push themselves physically enough, because everything is so emotional, right? And I feel like when you do things physically as a woman, it makes it easier to understand things emotionally, and it makes it easier for you to move through emotions because you've done something so hard physically.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my challenge to everybody, but in particularly women, to do something more physical. Whereas they're like, well, I'm gonna just I'm gonna build this garden, which is great, but it's not really taxing. I want you to have to push your mind, your body, and yourself to the limits. And if you do that once a year, life becomes very, very easy. The reason why life is so hard when you get old, or as you get older, is because you don't push yourself anymore. You don't get scraped up on the concrete, bike riding, jumping off some stairs, or falling off the jungle gym. You're not doing that stuff. You're not trying stuff out. You're just, I'm gonna go to yoga, and then I'm gonna go home, and that was a great workout, but it's not challenging enough. You need to challenge yourself physically. It doesn't need to be all the time, but it definitely needs to be challenging, where you got to push through something and do something that you're not normally used to doing. I think that's the biggest thing, is getting out of the monotony of doing all this. I'm just going to go to the gym, and yeah, it was a great gym session, but that's kind of easy. You've been doing the gym for the last 3-4 years. The gym's easy for you. Like, let's do something that's not easy for you. What's not easy for you? Oh, okay. You don't like running. Okay, well, why don't you do a 5-mile marathon? Right? Mm. Oh, you don't like it? Well, why not? Unless you have a physical problem, I'd say go do it. Right? I don't like the water. Guess what? I've been in water last year. Whole last year, water everywhere, just water. There's water here, water in the Galapagos, water in Costa Rica.
Water in Utah.
Water in Utah.
I still have that video.
Yeah, exactly. So I've challenged myself, and I pushed myself through it. And, on a spiritual level, you start to understand certain things, but water is the wisdom of the earth. Water's been here longer than anything else has been. Right. And so when you understand that, there's certain things that you can gather in water, and for whatever reason, there was something in my energy that was holding back from being in water for whatever reason. So it's very interesting how our soul, brings things into the physical, and we live through that. There's certain resistance to certain things. You're like, why do I not like cucumbers? I just hate them. Like, it's nothing about cucumbers. You know what I mean? Like,
you don't like cucumbers?
No, I love cucumbers. I'm just giving an example.
Why is that your example if that's not something you don't like?
It's just an example. Just an example.
Wouldn't you think an example that you come up with would be a real life example for yourself?
Could possibly something that I don't like. There's not really anything that I don't like.
There's no foods you don't like?
Just lobster, I'm allergic to it. That's it.
Okay.
Outside of that, like I eat most of it. Like I'm not gonna eat a spider. But like I'll eat most.
I wasn't gonna ask if you would eat a spider.
I'm just saying this isn't Fear Factor. You know what I mean? Like there's certain things that I don't want to do, but I've also learned to welcome just all beings. Over my last several years on this planet, just understanding that everything is a part of the whole, and just treating everything with love. So everything from the ants to everything else. It's like there's no difference, and so I just try to treat things kindly, and be as kind as I can to the world. So.
No, I get that.
Yeah.
Now, I want to backtrack a little bit, but we didn't fully discuss your transition from high school to playing in UCLA and then getting recruited for the NFL. So I'd love to go down that.
Yeah, sure. So after high school, I ended up getting a scholarship to, Arizona. Then I told you that story.
Yeah.
And then after that, everything kind of flooded in. And, I probably got another 4 offers from like Utah, the University of Utah, University of Boise State, University of Oregon State. And then I ended up getting one at the final minute from UCLA, which was, where I really want to go to USC because my mother went to USC, but I didn't, for whatever reason, they didn't offer me. So UCLA offered me and I ended up deciding to go there. So went there, played there for 4 years, had a pretty good career, and then had the opportunity to go to the NFL. So, I went to, my last college game against USC, I ended up breaking my arm. So I came up to make a tackle and completely broke my arm, left arm radius, forearm, and ended up being in the hospital, had surgery, had 6 plates with a screw put in my arm. And then a week after that, I ended up going to Tennessee where I was training to go to the NFL. So I was there with like 25 other players, some of the top players in the country. And I couldn't work out with my left arm. And so it was probably one of the most frustrating things that I've ever been through because I'm like, I was the workout guy. You know what I mean? Like I was doing everything. I was going to go above and beyond. And for me not to be able to use my left arm, that meant I couldn't really work out. Like I could do certain things, but I was limited to a big extent. So, that was a real test of being able to not lose, one, confidence in the dream, and then 2, to be able to figure out a different way. Right. And I'll tell you a story about that in a second. But I knew that I couldn't, really lift, but I knew there was another thing that I was great at, which was, being fast and being able to work on the other things that I was good at on the field. And so fortunately my cast was formed in the perfect shape to run, like this L shape. So I could run. And so that's literally what I focused on. I focused on running. I focused on agility. I focused on, jumping. And 2 weeks before I got my cast off, I ended up, trying out for the NFL. And I had the second fastest time for my position group going to the NFL. And so my agent was super excited. He was super happy. He was like, yeah, we think you may get drafted. And, for those of you that don't understand football, there's 7 rounds that each team gets to draft players in. And if you don't get drafted in those rounds, you get to try out for the team or a team. So I didn't get drafted. My parents threw this huge party for me. I had all these friends and family come over. My girlfriend at the time was there. And I ended up not getting drafted. And it was a very disappointing time for me. But, I had the opportunity to go try out for the Cleveland Browns. And so I went to the Cleveland Browns on a tryout and I ended up making the team. And so I made the team there. And that was like my first stint at getting on the team. And so that's like how I got into the NFL. And there's a whole backstory on all that stuff. And like, I can go deeper if you want to, but the ability to be able to focus on the goal and also be able to find a different way if something isn't working is a critical skill in life. And I don't feel like people understand it enough, because if something isn't working, a lot of people quit. And that's the biggest reason why you see people January 1st, January 2nd or 3rd in the gym, and it's packed. And then by February 1st, it's completely back to normal. It's because when people don't see results, or when people don't get what they want, they quit. And, you know, the example when I was talking about this story in Peru, I was having an experience with a shaman in Peru, in the sacred, actually in Pisco, which is it's part of Sacred Valley, but it's a huge mountain. It's at the very, very top of the mountain. Elevation is about 15,000 feet above sea level. So I just gotten to Cusco in Peru, the second largest city there. And I just gotten there like a few days before. And usually it takes, people are like sick. There's a lot of elevation sickness because Cusco is 12,000 feet above sea level. So you're still high up. And when I got there, I was definitely winded, and I was like, oh, this is, we are high, it's hard to breathe. But there was this mountaintop. There was like this it was probably another like 2,500 to 3,000 feet above where we were at. And I saw this like little kind of, it looked like a hut up there. I didn't know what it was. The shaman I was with told me it was like a watchtower for the Incans. And so we were going through this experience, this ceremony. And I said, I'm going to climb up to the top of that little hut. Right. And these mountains, and I'll send you some videos of this afterwards, but the mountaintop was so high up. And if you see it, you're gonna be like, there's no way you climb that. And I'm literally like walking, climbing. And I remember there was this bridge, and it was a man-made bridge. And then you cross the bridge, and then it's like straight up. And it's like, it's not like a path. It's like mud and rocks. You got to climb. And if you fall to your left, you fall off the mountain. And I was like, yeah, Bret, I know you're adventurous, or you're going to get to the top, but like, I'm like, ain't no way I'm going past that shit. Like, I'll just be honest with you. I was like, there's no way I'm going to walk across that bridge. And I got through the bridge and then go up and climb that. And I was like, you know what? And it was, and the thing is, it's windy in those mountains. Like it's not like you're high up, so the wind is hitting you. And so I was like, that's it. I'm not going up. And I was like, wait a second. I was like, I already told him I'm going up. I already told, my buddy Wilson, I already told him I'm going up. So I was like, I already told him, so I got to go. So I turn back around and I try to find another way. And I literally have to cross the whole backside of the mountain and then go back up the other way. Like I'm hiking through bushes and moving things and climbing through things. I don't know what the hell is in the bushes. I'm worried about something popping out. But I'm just like, F it. I told him I'm going to climb all the way up to the top. And that's what I did. And probably about an hour and a half later, I was at the top. And it was a great feeling. But, that story just reminded me, the story in college just reminded me of that situation, because if something's not working, change it. If that path isn't the right path, find a different path. Right? All paths aren't the right path. You got to find the right path for you, and you got to know when to change it up. And so that, when I was coming out of college, I was like, hey, this path shifted a little bit, but the goal is still the goal. I'm still climbing the mountain, but I'm just going to climb it a different way. And there's no right or wrong way to do anything. It's just how you decide to do it.
Okay. I like that there's no right or wrong way to do anything.
If anybody tells you this is the only way you can do it, it's very, very rare where there's only one way to do something. Like math is math, and numbers are numbers and things like that. I understand that. Like if you're coding, there may be only one way to do something, but usually there's a workaround, right? Usually there's a way around it. And the greatest people in life are the ones who don't take no for an answer and find a different way. No, I can't get that. Okay. And you know who the best examples of this are? Children. Children are the best examples of figuring out that they can do whatever they want. They're like, oh, this didn't work. Okay, well, let me try it this way. Oh, that didn't work. Well, let me try it this way, right? And they're going to try it 20 different times before they get it, okay? Some may cry first. Some may become frustrated and quit and then come back to it later. But kids are very good at getting what they want because they're willing to do whatever it takes. And then we lose that along the way because society tells us that this is the rules, which is why I don't like rules. This is why I don't like rules. Yep.
And that's why you've been not following them since kindergarten.
I follow most of them. Listen.
I'm just repeating back what was said by you.
I follow most of them. Yes, there's right, and there's things that are not in the highest good of the whole. Okay. But if you're doing something and you're doing it in a way where somebody else has never done it, and somebody's telling you, oh, you need to do it this way, this is how it needs to be done, just follow how you're doing it, follow your heart, and this is particular for like people who are trying to create something, people who are trying to a business per se, or I remember I used to rap back in the day, and I remember I was networking in the music industry, and I was talking to a couple of people, and I ended up meeting with at the time it was Rick Ross's manager, and I remember sitting in it wasn't Rick Ross. I don't know why I said Rick Ross. It was Akon's manager. Akon, remember Akon?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it was his manager, and I met Akon, and then I went and kicked it with his manager, and I put on my music, and he was like, oh, he's like, yeah, I like this. You can rap for sure. He's like, but you got to do something. And this is why I said Rick Ross. He was like, you got to do something like Rick Ross. He's like, you got to do like this kind of beat. And I'm like, okay, but I'm not Rick Ross. So why am I doing Rick Ross's beats? You see what I'm saying? Like, why am I trying to be like Rick Ross? I'm Bret Lockett. So why am I trying to be like him? Right. And, anybody who's telling you, hey, you need to do this, you need to do that, run the other way. If they're not telling you how to become the best you, I want you to be my protege. I don't want anybody to be my protege. I want you to be you. Because if you're like me, there's a problem. There's certain things that I want you to do that are similar to how I'm telling you to do it that will help you, but I still want you to do it in your own way. It's the underlying mental attitude behind most of it, really. It's the underlying belief system behind most of it, really, but I want you to still do it your way.
No, I get that. I get that. That reminds me of how you said to me recently how you're exactly where you're meant to be. And I didn't fully agree with that. And you said otherwise you'd be somewhere else.
100%.
Is there something that made you realize that?
I mean, there's several instances throughout life. Like I just gave you that How I Met Dragon example, right? How I Met Curtis, Lee Thomas, who is,
I would love to elaborate on that because that's how we got connected.
Yeah, exactly. So when I was playing for the Patriots, I met Curtis through some of the players. Curtis is from Rhode Island. He, at the time, was doing some, he was doing some really big parties for some of the players. And I met him kind of out and about. And, at the time we weren't really close or anything like that. I sat down with him a couple of times for some business opportunities, but nothing that we ever really worked on together, and, and I left New England and I ended up playing for the Jets after that. And I didn't think about, we lost touch. We didn't keep in touch after that. I lost touch with a lot of people that I was there with. And so probably 6 years later, I or let me backtrack. So when I moved back to LA after I was playing, this was like 2016. I got invited to a birthday party. I met this dude who introduced me to his friends, and his friend invited me to a birthday party in Venice at a bowling alley. And so at his birthday party, I meet this girl who was super cool, and she invited me to her birthday party, right? Like a week later. And then at that birthday party, I met this dude who was like, hey, there's this dope entrepreneur network in LA that I think you would really enjoy. They're having an event next Saturday. Why don't you come? And I'm like, all right, great. Right. And so this is all like week, like back to back. And then, so I go to this entrepreneur networking event in LA. And as I'm walking through, I bump into Curtis. I'm like, Curtis? He's like, Brett. I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? He's like, oh, I just moved to LA like 3-4 months ago. And literally reconnected. He gave me his first book, The World Is Yours. And we started hanging out, and I was like, this dude is weird. He wears crystals. Like, I don't know what the hell is going on. Let's talk about aliens and you know what I mean? Like all types of stuff that I really didn't understand at the time. And, he just kept, giving me certain things to help me along my path. And I'm forever grateful for him, because I wouldn't be where I am without him. But, it's so crazy how the universe just continues to bring people back into your life or remove people out of your life when it's time. And that's why I say there's no right or wrong. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there. Everything is choreographed. There's so many facets of this thing that's moving that you couldn't even wrap your mind around. No one could.
That is true. So now you started playing for the Browns and you went to the Patriots. How did you make that shift?
So
why'd you leave?
So I was on the Browns for training camp, and what happens at that time, each team carries 75 players, and they have to release about 20 of them to cut down to a 53-man roster. So each NFL team can only have 53 people that play on their team at a time. So I came in as a 75, and then they started letting people go. So as a first and second year player, you can play on something called the practice squad, which is about 8 players, and they only practice with the team. They don't travel. Right. And so when I got called into the office, they told me that they were going to cut me and put me on to the practice squad. And so I was a little upset, but practice squad is still a great way to make it into the NFL, because if somebody gets hurt, they can take you off the practice squad and put you on the active roster at any point during the season.
Okay.
Or another team could pick you up right off of the practice squad and put you on their active roster. So what happened was I was sitting in my general manager's office the day after he let me go to sign the practice squad contract. And my agent calls me, and literally I picked the phone up and I'm like, hey, his name is Barty. I'm like, hey, B, what's going on? He's like, hey, the Patriots just signed you. Pack your shit. You're going to New England. And I'm like, what? He's like, the Patriots just signed you. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm in the GM's office. Hold on, I'll call you back. So the GM calls me and he's like, hey, I don't know if you heard, Patriots just picked you up. I'm like, yeah, my agent just called me. He's like, hey, wish you the best of luck. And I went to the hotel that I've been living out of for like the last 2 months, threw all my stuff in a suitcase, and was on the first plane out like 2 hours to New England. And was there. They picked me up, take me to the hotel. I wake up at 6 o'clock the next day, go to the facility, and Bill Belichick welcomes me to the team.
And how was that?
It was surreal. I mean, it was one of those moments where like life was just happening so fast that you were just like taking it all in, and you're like this young kid who doesn't really know much about the world like that. And I didn't even know where New England was. It's like, where are we going? It's like, it's Boston. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't
You
know
had never been to New England before? Never
been to the East Coast before I played there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I'm like a true like California kid. Like I traveled on the East Coast or on the West Coast with football in college, Oregon, Washington, Arizona, places like that, Nevada, but like I never went, really past like Denver, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. And how was Bill Belichick? How was
exactly how you see him on TV? Very serious. Yeah. very straightforward and, wants to win, which, anybody appreciates who's playing at that level. So, but it was crazy. I'm in the locker room and I'm like, oh shit, that's Tom Brady. Oh shit, that's Randy Moss. Like, oh shit, that's, Brandon Merriweather. Like it was one of those moments where you're just like, damn, I'm here. And that's kind of crazy when you get to that point, when you're like, I've seen these guys my entire life. I've looked up to certain guys my entire life. And like, now I'm here with you. Like, it's pretty crazy. Or I played against this guy in college, or this guy was a Hall of Famer or a Heisman Trophy candidate or winner. And now I'm playing this dude in the NFL. Like, it's kind of wild. Like I played against Reggie Bush at USC, when we played USC. I'm like running down and I hit him and I'm like, damn, I just hit Reggie Bush. This is kind of crazy. You know what I mean? Reggie Bush is like, the probably the best college running back to ever play football. You know what I mean? And, I had the chance to play with him. So it's just really cool when you actually actualize on your reality, on your dream. It's like, these can be everybody's moments when you never take your foot off the gas and you never lose faith. I think that's the biggest thing, is like the faith. The faith is the energy that carries you when times are hard. Like, you lose faith, you lose everything. Because when you lose faith, you start doubting. Because the only thing that replaces faith is doubt. If you lose, like, I can do this and I believe in myself, the only other place to go is backwards. There's no other place to go. Like, faith is everything. So the number one thing that you should always have is the faith and belief that you can achieve. It should never change. It should never shift. It should never waver. Because that energy that wavers, if there's fear in anything you start, eventually that commitment is going to shift. Because it wasn't always 100% when you started. I never had fear as a child of, oh, I'm not going to get to this place. Now, sometimes you may not get there because it's not your path, but that's okay. But what I'm saying is, you're going to have to learn that lesson sooner or later in life, that I can get extremely far if I believe in myself.
No, you say you may not get there because it's not your path.
Correct. Not everybody's meant to play in the NFL. Not everybody's meant to get there, right? Like, my brother played in the NFL, but he didn't like have the kind of career that I did, even though, he could have. Like, he could have played with a lot of those guys and made active roster, but that wasn't his path. But he's a hell of a football coach right now. And if he didn't go through that situation, he wouldn't be the football coach that he is in college right now. You know what I mean? So everybody's path is different.
No, I get what you're saying.
My sister played soccer. She decided to not go pro. That's her decision. But she also ran, the SoFi Stadium in Los Angeles and won a Super Bowl with the Rams and has a Super Bowl ring. I played in the NFL. I don't even have a Super Bowl ring. And she's got a Super Bowl ring, which is pretty cool. So like, everybody's got a specific path. And the older you get, the more life you live on this planet, the more you start understanding why you're doing what you're doing and now I see what all these struggles were at the time. Now it's not a struggle anymore because it's done. Everything that I've gone through, I can think about it and be like, damn, that was hard. But I don't feel that really in my body anymore. It was just at that time, my body was tired or when I felt stress or that emotion, right? That fear is gone. It's just like, I'm here now. You can come back if you go put yourself back in that situation. But that's the key of understanding, your brain and how you operate is like, I got to push through at this time, because if I push through at this time, eventually it's going to be done. It'll leave, right? It's like getting on a roller coaster and you're like terrified and you get on that roller coaster and you're done in 35 seconds, but you're like, damn, that was crazy. Do I want to do it again? Probably not, but like, I had a great time.
Okay. No, I get what you're saying. So you mentioned how you met Curtis when you were in New England playing for the Patriots.
Yep.
Was your meeting with Curtis and his interest in crystals and all that your first introduction to spirituality, per se?
In New England or in LA? I'm sorry.
In general.
Well, when I met Curtis in New England, it was, we weren't on that page. When I met him, he was like throwing parties for the Patriots. And he had some other things. I think he owned a liquor company at the time, and he was trying to raise some money for that. So I think he was trying to get me to invest in that. So there was a few things going on. Curtis is always, always selling something. He's like the guru of, figuring out how to create businesses. So, we weren't on that page then, but when I ran back into him in LA, that's when he started really introducing me to the spiritual or the metaphysical side of the way the world exists, the way the universe exists, and it was like, and that was 6 years ago. So it was almost that was 2016. So it was almost 8 years ago. So I've been on this journey for, really at that point, from really looking at and understanding these things and understanding how to use my intuition, understanding how to use all the things that, people don't talk about, or they've been hidden for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. I'm starting to understand how to reawaken my soul. And there's a reason why things are hidden. There's very, very high powers that do not want people to understand their power. There's very, very high people that don't want people to come together. And it's been since a very long time. Like I said, thousands of years they've been hiding this stuff. There's 57 miles worth of literature in the Vatican. It's 57 miles of library literature in the Vatican. So when you understand that, you're like, okay, well, what the hell is in the Vatican, right?
Are you there?
I'm here. Sorry. Can you still see me?
You're frozen on my end.
You're frozen on my end. My computer's doing this weird willy thing. Hold on. You can hear me though, right?
I can hear you, yeah.
You want to keep going, or you want to pause until we figure this out?
This looks weird. You are like mid.
I know. You should see your face. Can you see your face? I think it's my Wi-Fi because.
By the way, you so jinxed me. I have to pee so fucking bad.
Yep. See, I knew it. Nope, you can't go pee either. Pee on yourself.
I'm gonna pee.
Hold on. Let me check the Wi-Fi really quick. I think there's a Wi-Fi issue. If I restart my computer, is that okay? Or
yeah, sure.
Okay, I just want to make sure it wasn't going to mess anything up. Let me restart it, and then because this wheel is just spinning for whatever reason. All right, hang tight.
Hey guys, I hope you are enjoying the first half of my conversation with Bret. I have split this up into 2 parts because Bret and I talked for almost 4 hours. This man is such an inspiration to me, and he's such a down-to-earth and friendly individual who I have really taken a liking to from the start, from when I first met him. And not because he was a former NFL player, primarily because I complimented his tattoos the first time I met him. And for those of you who haven't seen me in person or seen a picture of me, I've got a lot of tattoos. And it was funny because Bret's response to me when I complimented his tattoos were, because I said, I really like your tattoos. I'm really into them, And he goes, no shit, look at all yours. And his just down to earth nature and the kickstart that he gives to people in his life. Like he even mentioned, when a thought comes to him of a certain person in his life, he reaches out to them. Because like he said, you don't have a thought for no reason, which is true. We are all dealing with something. And chances are some of the people even in your life that you're closest to, you don't know what they're dealing with. So if they come to your mind, reach out to them. It's for a reason. But also emphasize the biggest thing is accountability and realizing that you want to change and then taking an action. that's when things will start to happen. You got to move. If things are not working, if you're stagnant, nothing's going to happen. Nothing's going to work. Nothing's going to change. Then Bret and I talked about fear. And he talked about how fear comes from two different things. We have fear because we're not good at something, we'll be made fun of, we don't know how to do it well, or we have fear that we'll get hurt, severely injured, we'll lose our life, we'll die. Then Bret talked about how everything is already answered. If you sit long enough, sit and meditate, you'll tap into your intuition and you'll uncover the answer to whatever your question is or whatever you're wondering. Then Bret talked about how when you look at the world differently and you change your frequency, you'll change your attitude, which will overall change your life. Then Bret talked about my personal favorite thing he touched upon, about how there's no wrong decision. If you are not hurting anybody else, you can't make a wrong decision in your life. Focus on what it is you want to achieve, what the goal is, and find a way. If something isn't working, find a different way. Bret talked about how a lot of people quit if something doesn't work. It doesn't mean you're not meant to achieve the goal. Maybe you're meant to achieve the goal in a different way. Bret emphasized that you need to have faith and belief that you can achieve whatever it is you are trying to achieve. You can't have fear, because if you have fear in anything, eventually your commitment will shift. And the last thing I want to leave y'all with is you heard Bret and I talk a few times about this goal setting event that we've attended and he facilitated 2 years ago. It is normally led by our friend Curtis Thomas. And Bret talked about how when he led this event, he challenged everyone to do what's known as the Musagi Challenge. And doing something really, really tough and really challenging once each year that will shape your whole year. And he even talked about how a lot of females don't always do this. You'll go to the gym, which is a challenge, but even myself, I'm a gym girly, and I go to the gym all the time though. But what is that real, physical, mental, emotional challenge that you are going to complete? Regardless of when you are hearing this, you still have time to complete one really hard challenge throughout the year. So, Bret and I are challenging you to do that. I hope you all enjoyed the first half of my conversation with Bret, and stay tuned for part 2. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you, I'm rooting for you, and you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.